Hello, everyone, and welcome to Readers of the Lost Art. My name is Bobby.
And I'm Rachel. Today, we are talking about our first book in Season 1, 100 Years of Murder, and it is called The Circular Staircase by Mary Roberts Rinehart. I have gotten that name wrong so many times, but I nailed it that time, so.
You got it. First time. Like it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. I feel like we need to, explain the premise again. I don't know why. If someone's new.
We didn't do a great job explaining the premise in the first episode. We realized after we, heard the first episode. Perhaps this is our second chance to explain the premise.
So our goal with this podcast is to deep dive into a genre of book or an author or other word I can't think of. A thing. Dive into a thing. We love a deep dive, and so we want to deep dive this season into mystery novels, specifically murder mysteries. And so we are reading one novel from each decade, starting with 1900s up until 2020.
And
or 2019.
When was The Circular Staircase published? Did we finally get that date?
Published in 1908.
I was so close when I guessed 1907.
You were so close.
Man. Yeah. I did do a little bit of research. Bobby's handling most of the research for this episode, but I do remember that it was originally serialized.
Yes.
And then it was published. So maybe the serialization happened in 1907.
Probably.
And I was technically correct.
I think you were, because I also was remembering 1907, but then when I, went to our good friend Wikipedia, it said 1908. So I think 1908 is when it was compiled into a book, but then it had been serialized the previous year. Let's talk a little bit about our good friend Mary Roberts Rinehart.
Okay.
She is an American author. I think all of our authors are American. I think we talked about that. She lived in New York, I believe. I'm not going to get into her full history. She did sign up to be a nurse for the war in Belgium. I'm assuming that's World War I. I guess that's the only one that makes sense. And she did have breast cancer and had a double mastectomy and talked about that. And that was she was one of the first people that was very open about that process.
Oh, wow.
Some fun facts about her. So she was referred to as the American Agatha Christie, even though she predated Agatha Christie. Her first book was Circular Staircase, which was published in 1908. She also, with the Circular Staircase, and I think this is one of the reasons why it's on a bunch of best of detective novels list, is it created the If I Had Only Known genre of mystery, which is where the narrator will say, if only I had realized at the time what was going to happen later, which she does do frequently in this novel.
I was telling my husband that the narrator feels very present in this book. A lot of times the narrator almost fades into the background and you don't really notice them as a character. You just think of the character as the character. But this felt like the narrator was really telling you a story. You could just feel the narrator. And that, up to you whether you thought that was good or not.
Yeah, there were times when I was I do feel like this is a very unreliable narrator, and I don't know if I was supposed to feel that way. And that's the thing.
We both highlighted the same quote about how smart she is.
Yeah.
She's writing and she's the detective complimented how smart I was. And it's just
and she says that again later. She says that early in the book, and then at the end of the book she talks about how the detective there was no way he could have possibly solved the case without her help. And I'm
I think that's not
I don't
true.
know if that's true. I don't think that's right.
Half the time the detective knows things and she's how does he know that? And it's because he's a good detective and you're not. This is crazy.
And she's withholding information from him in order to protect her family, and he already knows.
Yeah, it's
the whole thing with the pistol, or the revolver. He was so when are you gonna tell me about that revolver you found in the tulip bed? And she was how did he know? And it's he's paying attention, is what he's trying to actually solve the mystery and not just trying to get in everybody's way. But we get ahead of ourselves. So here's a fun fact. This is my favorite fact about Mary Roberts Rinehart, is that she had a vacation home in Maine, and in 1947 she had a Filipino chef. He had worked for her for 25 years, but he shot at her and then attempted to slash her with knives, and she had to be rescued by other servants. So I read that on Wikipedia, and they gave no other information, and I was hold up. What? And so I had to dig a little deeper, and as it turns out, he tried to murder her because she had hired a butler that he didn't like.
That's an extreme reaction.
I know. So that was fun. She also wrote a book called Bab, a Sub-Deb, which I've read that title a million times. I'm like, I don't understand what it's trying to tell me. But it is a rom-com, essentially about a young girl living in New York who's from like a rich family, and she's always getting into trouble. It says, like, when she buys a frame with a photograph of a young man in it and claims that it's her boyfriend to shock her family, but then the man in the photograph actually shows up full of endearments. And I think that sounds really fun.
It does sound like a fun premise. I don't know that I liked this author enough to read another of her books, though, so...
Right. See, that's the thing. I want to try a different genre and to see, okay, was it just this one book that I really didn't enjoy? Or is she better in a different genre? Or, like, do we just write her off completely? Because she sounds like a cool lady for the most part.
Yeah, there's a huge caveat that we should discuss.
A huge caveat, which we will get into. She did actually, Circular Staircase was actually super popular. It sold she did write, it says in 1907 she did write The Circular Staircase. Okay. So that's when it was serialized. Her book sold 1.25 million copies.
I had read somewhere that she wrote this book because her husband had lost his job, so she had to make money for them, which I think is fun.
It's not, I mean, you don't really get that a lot in the early 1900s where the woman has to step up and be the provider. Her father also did commit suicide when she was 19.
Oh, wow.
So she had like a really rocky life.
Yeah.
But came through it all.
I often find that older books, like the tone, I think is very hard to read. They sound very old-timey to me, and that makes me not pay attention very well. And so it's very, very hard for me to get through them. But when I started reading this, I felt like the tone was pretty modern. There were, again, big caveat. But the tone in the first chapter I thought was very fun. It was kind of irreverent. So I guess we should get into the synopsis of The Circular Staircase. We're going to do our best here. So I guess also spoilers. We're gonna spoil this book. I'm not saying that you should read it, so that doesn't mean that you should turn this off and go read it first. Yeah. I actually think probably you shouldn't.
Maybe we should start at the top of each episode, have a spoiler warning and also a recommendation, as in, do we want you to read this book before you listen to this episode, or should you not read that book and just let us spoil it for you?
I will say that the book is available for free, so if you wanted to read it, you could. Just because something is free doesn't mean that it's good.
Yeah.
So in The Circular Staircase, the main character is named Rachel, which was fun for me. Rachel is the kind of main caretaker of her niece and nephew, Halsey and Gertrude, and together they rent a summer house in the country. You find out at the end that the lease is for 6 months, which I think is crazy. That's not a summer house. That's a half a year house.
Yeah. Well, she says too that she's doing, you don't find that out again until later, but she's having renovations done to her townhouse. So that's another one of the reasons why she gets the summer house. And also the summer house she gets is huge.
Yeah, it's like a mansion.
My book had a layout floor plan of the first floor.
Oh, mine did not.
Which was very helpful for and I'm like, I wish every book that is about an old house had a floor plan, because I got super confused because the layout of the house is important to the mystery. Yeah. Unfortunately. But yeah, so I enjoyed having that floor plan, but I wish they'd had one for upstairs, because as it turns out, there's a lot of stuff that goes down upstairs, and they didn't give me a floor plan for that. So.
They rent the summer house, and she goes out there first. Kind of weird things start happening. They see some people outside. They hear some noises. And then eventually her niece and nephew, Halsey and Gertrude, come. And the night that they come, I think, they bring Jack Bailey, who is important.
Yes. And they say that they had just met him at a gas station.
And they just bring him.
And I was like, what?
So that night they hear a gunshot, and they go down the circular staircase, and at the bottom of the circular staircase there is a dead man, and they don't know who it is. Halsey is gone at this point. He's disappeared. Gertrude is still there, and they get the town to come up, and it turns out that it is the son of the owner of this house. And so they ring for the owners of the house, who are now in California, and they're like, your son has died. And they say that, also the older Armstrong, it's the Armstrong house, the older Armstrong is sick, and so he can't come right now. But they're going to be coming soon. And they keep having issues with this house. So they're like investigating the murder. It really looks like Gertrude did it.
Gertrude or Halsey.
Or Halsey, because Halsey
has
disappeared at this point.
Along with Jack Bailey.
And they haven't come back. I think it's like 2 or 3 days before they come back. So those two have disappeared. There's a dead man, and the police officer, the detective, is, really investigating around the house, and he seems to very much suspect Halsey or Gertrude. It's clear that Gertrude's lying about something. It's clear that everyone's lying about something, but in like a really weird way. I don't know.
Like, it's pretty clear that Gertrude is withholding information.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that there's something kind of sus going on with her, but it's unclear what. And I feel getting to the end of the story, there's not a single reason why anyone needed to lie about anything.
No, it's really unclear.
Not a single character. Even there's one character that comes in later, Louise, who's fully withholding information for 0 reasons. And it's like, you could have solved this whole thing like immediately.
Yes.
So every single character that's withholding information, there's no reason. Like there's nothing, in my opinion, there's no reason for them to be withholding information.
I agree.
Which I think is the thing that made this book kind of frustrating in the end.
One of the things about serialized stories, and you see this a lot with these stories, is that they do need a good editor to come through and clean them up. This one could have used a good editor in many places. So I don't think the story like hangs together particularly well as a mystery, and I think part of that is because it was not written and then edited. It was kind of written as it was unfolding. So you have these people keeping secrets, but you never get like a good reason. Anyways, like after the death, they find out that there was like a break-in at the bank and all of the money at the bank was stolen. And they think, oh, it was Jack Bailey who did it because he's a teller at the bank and he's disappeared. So once Jack Bailey comes back, he does come back, there's an inquisition. They still don't know who murdered Dr. Armstrong, or not Dr. Armstrong, Dr. Armstrong's son. And then Dr. Armstrong, the main Armstrong, who was sick in California, he also dies, they say. And they send his body back and they bury him. And they're still hearing noises at the house. So we still have these on. So Rachel is like, I don't know why they died. I don't know if Jack Bailey really stole the money, because it turned out that one of the things Gertrude was lying about was that she was engaged to Jack Bailey. So Rachel's like, I don't understand all of these things. I don't understand why there's ghosts at the house. There's a very fun character named Liddy, the housekeeper. My favorite character. And she's like constantly trying to quit and leave because of the ghosts in the house. All of the servants are talking about the ghosts in the house.
And they are having trouble like keeping servants at the house. Like they're dropping like flies. Not dying, just like leaving.
One of them ends up, and this becomes important later, one of them ends up with like an infection, a blood infection on her hand, and she leaves. There is a servant who dies. His name is Thomas. They say he was scared to death.
R.I.P. Thomas.
He dies at the lodge. I never really figured out what the lodge was.
I couldn't figure out
like
how big these grounds were.
were.
Because there is a part where like the stables, they say, catch on fire, but the stables are also where they're keeping the Halsey's car.
Yes.
And it seems like the stables are a ways away from the house because the whole idea is that they set the fire to draw everybody away from that, like fully away from the house.
Yeah.
So that people could break into the house. It feels like it must be absolutely enormous. This country manor.
And at some point, so this lodge that's on the property, at some point you mentioned Louisa. Louisa comes and she stays in this lodge. She is sick.
She's one of the Armstrongs.
Yeah, it turns out she's
the sister.
The sister of these people. Dr. Armstrong
is he
Sr.
a doctor? Because I thought he was the bank owner.
Oh, he was the bank owner. I don't know why
Dr. Walker is the other doctor.
Maybe I just...
The shady doctor.
I just always, in my head, called him Dr. Armstrong for apparently no reason. I don't remember the Armstrong's actual name, so I'm going to call him Armstrong Sr. Armstrong Sr. is Louisa's stepfather. She doesn't have a good relationship with. It's all these like little details. It's like, I think maybe it's probably important to the mystery.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
The mystery wasn't that good, so it's hard to say.
No, it wasn't.
But anyway, so Louisa is here, and she's in love with Halsey, the nephew, and they were engaged to be married, but then I guess that was called off because she was then officially engaged to Dr. Walker.
Who, by the way, is the one who identifies the body of Armstrong Jr.
And also the body of Armstrong Sr., right? I think he's the one who gets the body from California. Where was I? Who knows?
Louisa, you're talking about how Louisa has arrived.
Yes.
Had a bad relationship with her father.
She does some things.
Mostly she just shows up and gets sick.
Yeah. None of the things she does seem to be important. No. She lies a lot. Mm-hmm. And then towards the end, Halsey disappears again. Mm-hmm. Louisa comes up and she's like, we have to find him. He's in trouble.
Also of note is that the lawyers and Dr. Walker keep trying to get Rachel and Gertrude and Halsey to move out of the house in spite of her 6-month lease. Yes. Because the family come and they're like, we want to live here. It's our house. And she's like, yeah, I signed papers. I'm not leaving. So
there's several investigation scenes. None of them seem important. They find Halsey because of a homeless man finds him. And
Halsey had crashed into the side of a train.
Yes.
And then 2 men had come and taken him and bound him up
and thrown him
in an empty boxcar. Yeah. And this guy is, as they say, a tramp that's riding the rails, and he finds him and takes his pocket watch and tries to sell it.
But he does leave him
and that's how
there.
They're able to trace back to him. Yeah.
And then a different homeless man finds him later and tells this homeless man, and then they get the news back and they go find him in the hospital. Halsey's fine.
He does get rescued eventually.
At some point, Rachel figures out there's money hidden in the house. So that bank robbery, the money was hidden in this house. And that's why they keep hearing people trying to come get it. So she figures out that there is a secret room upstairs, and she gets herself locked in there. At some point, the bad guy comes in there with her, but then he is...
And the bad guy was Who was the bad guy? I was like, who is this?
Armstrong Sr.,
Is it Dr. Walker?
I think it was Armstrong.
I thought it was Armstrong Jr. because wasn't his the coffin that they go dig up?
I thought that was Armstrong Sr.
I could get my book and look. Okay.
I think Armstrong Jr. really died. I think Armstrong Sr. is the one who didn't die.
Who could... honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. The mystery doesn't change either way.
It doesn't. But it turns out that there was this plan because Armstrong Sr. was the bank teller, so he was the one who loved money. So he had this plan to steal all the money.
But I thought it was Armstrong Jr. because he was the one that had the relationship with the woman who had measles and he had the secret child.
Yes. But so young Armstrong and old Armstrong knew of the plan. Okay. Knew the money was in the house and they were of the same plan, I believe.
I did not get that. I mean, maybe I'd already decided that it was young Armstrong and that was just because they don't really say. They don't make it clear which Armstrong they're talking about, I think. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that Senior Armstrong doesn't die.
Okay.
I don't think he dies in California. Obviously, neither of us know what happened in this story, so we're ready to talk about it.
So anyway, so one of the Armstrongs has buried a body in their stead.
Yes.
The other young Armstrong had been shot by a maid in the house, the one who had the blood problem. And as it turns out, she got that because he hit her with a golf club and the golf club poisoned her somehow. So she's dying.
They said she has blood poisoning, so what is that called? Sepsis.
Oh.
So she got an infection and then the infection caused sepsis was how I understood it.
So she's dying and does a whole deathbed confession about the young Armstrong and how he had a secret wife, not a secret wife, but a secret child that he wasn't taking care of and was in fact extorting money from the woman who was taking care of the child, who wasn't even the mother because the mother had died. And he was making her pay him money so that he wouldn't go after the child. And I was like, how much money is he realistically getting out of this housekeeper?
Yeah.
That's weird. And I feel like the explanation that they just love money so much, they just love money.
They love to sit on money. They don't want to spend it. They just love to look at it.
They just like to have it. I was like, this feels very strange to me.
I love that I said we would make this the shortest summary, and I just made it so long.
But it's how do you explain how dumb it is if you're not giving the details that show us how dumb it is,
But yeah, so she doesn't actually solve the murder. So that's why I think it was the senior Armstrong that was dug up, because I think she actually does kill the younger Armstrong. She shoots him at the circular staircase. I think that one really dies when she shoots him at the circular staircase. And Walker, someone. She really...
I think it's Watson.
Watson?
I do think it's Watson.
Yeah. So she has this deathbed confession that solves the whole crime. The only thing left is to find the money.
Which Rachel does find the room with the money, but gets herself locked into the secret room.
And she feels...
There's like a whole part where she's like climbing up on the roof.
Yeah.
And she becomes like a legend in this town of the gray lady ghost because she says she's wearing like a gray silk gown when she climbs up on the roof. And there's a part where it says that like she rips off part of the dress and she wraps it around her head. And I was like, what is going on here? But she like scares a newspaper boy because she has a cat that shows up twice in this entire book.
I think it shows up 3 times. I feel like you should give... Is it Beulah?
Beulah.
You should give Beulah her due.
I only remember the part in the beginning where she's like, oh, hey, and I have a cat. And then the part at the end where the newspaper boy is throwing rocks at the cat. And so she yells at the newspaper boy.
Again, a strong editor could have fixed that.
So she does that. And then somehow, but then she's like, I didn't find anything. So I had to go back inside. And I was like, what was the point of all of that? Like, what? Why did we...
That she had like a deadline and she had to get words sent.
I guess.
And then those words didn't get cut because there wasn't an editor and it was a serialized story. I think that was the point of that scene. And there are several scenes like that where it's like, I don't know why I just read that.
Why was this even in here?
So she gets stuck in the fireplace and there's a safe, or it's like behind the mantle of the fireplace, there's a secret room. She gets stuck there. There's a safe. They open the safe. I guess we forgot to mention Alex. They bring in this gardener named Alex who turns out to be Jack Bailey. And this woman who is so smart, so clued into everything, doesn't recognize this man because he shaved his mustache off. He had a clean shaven face, so he was literally unrecognizable.
I wonder, does that count as a mustachioed man as well for my bingo board?
I had a lot of questions.
Because the mustache is important.
There are several like bingo squares where I'm like, did I get that?
I think I'm only officially giving myself 2. I'm giving myself the secret room.
Yes.
And I'm giving myself the fake death, which I think you also had fake death.
I am giving myself a country estate. I'm giving myself faked death. I'm giving myself mysterious aid comes in the form of a letter/note. Because they did have this secret note about that had mysterious words missing that would make the note make sense, which is why Rachel ends up finding the secret room. But then the detective also finds the secret room separate from Rachel. So like she didn't even have to do anything. What I'm not sure if I should get is there is no official investigation due to misjudged death because they say that Senior Armstrong died, but he didn't really die.
I wouldn't give myself that.
Okay.
Because there is an investigation that is happening with the official, like, detective. Because they are investigating the situation. They just don't realize that he is actually not dead. Right. Halsey realizes it, and that's one of the things that he goes to confront Dr. Walker about.
I don't think I should give myself this one, but the other one was innocent woman who's actually involved in the crime because Anna Watson, was actually the one who shot that guy. But I feel like she was such a minor side character that I shouldn't get that one either.
When she came back at the end, I was like, who's Watson? Who's Mrs. Watson? What are we talking about?
And then I also have wrongly accused goes to jail in the first half, and Jack Bailey does go to jail, and he is wrongly accused.
Did he actually go to jail?
He does, because they say he's out on bond.
Oh.
But it's not a major plot point, and no one thinks he's innocent, so I feel like I shouldn't give myself that either.
Or no one thinks he's guilty?
No one's trying to get him free from jail.
Oh, okay.
So, it's not like, I've got to solve this to free Jack Bailey. It's like, Rachel's like, we got him. He's probably the right person. He's probably bad. Because Rachel's not a good detective.
She's not. And she, like, when she goes and she finds the revolver in the tulip.
Yeah, by the way, there's a revolver in the tulip bed. I didn't mention.
She finds it and she digs it up and she just takes it and gives it back to Halsey, and he just has it. And then there is a part where she goes and gets it and she's just firing all over the house.
She does shoot.
Girl.
She shoots Senior Armstrong in the foot, and Dr. Walker treats him.
Yeah, and he's like covering for him because she goes and asks Dr. Walker, is anybody walking with a limp? Like, have you treated someone with a gunshot wound in the leg? And he obviously says no because he's in on it. And I'm like, Rachel, you know that he's shady. Like, the one thing that she does do is she clocks Dr. Walker as being shady from the start.
Yeah.
That is like the one thing. The rest of it, she's just kind of bumbling around, just doing whatever. And then she's giving herself credit for having solved the mystery. And I'm like, I don't think that you did, though.
When I was telling Bobby about this, like, I really liked the tone of the first chapter. It was so irreverent. She was so bumbling. And I do love a hot mess. And I was like, this woman is a hot mess. she's clearly, like, thinks very highly of herself, but she's actually, like, a little crazy. And just, like, I was really enjoying that. But it did not work as a mystery detective, as a person trying to solve a mystery. Like, the tone did not hold up through the book because you're like, what is she doing? Like,
I feel like in some ways she didn't lean enough into that. Like, if you had a character like that who was supposed to be super important to the mystery, and they keep claiming how important they are to the mystery, but then it's very clear that actually you're just causing problems for everybody, that would be one thing. I think that could work really well. But part of the problem is that when we're only seeing things through her POV, it's pretty clear that somebody understands what's going on, and it's not our POV character. So then we as the audience are also like, I don't understand what's happening right now because my narrator is an idiot.
Mr. Jameson, I think is the name of the detective. He figures out everything on his own, even things that she's hiding from him. He figures out and knows, and he's like telling her. At the end, it's even revealed that he knew that Jack Bailey had shaved his mustache and become Alex the gardener. He was aware. And it's like, I can't believe that she was the best, most critical detective to this case when you have the actual detective who got everything.
Yeah. Without her help. And the way that he's like, I need you to come with me. You're the only woman that I trust to come with me and be part of this. I'm like, is he just like flattering her?
Is he in love with her?
Why?
And there was a part where she was like, and I kissed him and I can't believe it. Which I thought was
very
funny.
unclear to me, like how old he was supposed to be. In my mind, I kind of cast him as like a younger, maybe like a 30s or a 40s, where she's supposed to be like 50s, 60s, I think.
At some point, someone says that she's his mother, and she has a very funny line where she's like, "Don't ever wear black; it ages you."
See, that's the thing. I feel like there was so much potential for the story to be charming because, like, there was the other line where she goes to the funeral, and I think it was Thomas's funeral. I want to say, or no, he didn't have a funeral. They were at a funeral for somebody, and she's talking about this other lady who just puts on black at the slightest provocation just because it's becoming.
Yes,
and I was like, that's very funny. Like, I like this sort of catty old woman telling the story.
Yeah,
like it reminded me of like Rachel Lindsay from Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, okay.
Like that. So if Rachel Lindsay were we're trying to be a detective and we're telling the story in her own POV, like that's what this would be. That would be like this. It would be like the circular staircase. And I think that could be very funny and charming. But it didn't land. It didn't land fully for me.
So this book, we had picked it because, one, it's really hard to do research by publication date. When we were doing research, we both kind of independently did research and came with a list, and then we like looked at the blurb and picked one. So when I was doing research, I was looking at like best of lists, like other people on the internet's best of lists, and having to really tailor that search to like best mystery written between 1900. Like, it was really hard. But this one was on several best of lists, and I kind of like read what they had to say about it. And we had kind of talked about, after reading it, we think a lot of the reason that it was on these best of lists is because it kind of invented a genre. Well, one of the things that we should talk about is that there was a lot of unexpected racism in here.
Yeah, very casual, just slipped in for no reason, like just comment comments that were
shocking,
very jarring and unsettling for someone today that just seemed very casual. And it's hard to know, like you were talking about how it's hard to know if that was normal for the time,
right?
Or if our good friend Mary Roberts is just a real racist,
right?
You know,
like obviously that's uncomfortable to read. It was surprising to me when I read it because I had read these, like this book was on so many best of lists and like no one had mentioned it. Like no one was like, by the way, there's just some real casual racism just sprinkled in, like chocolate chips.
So like, is this something that we're sort of expecting because of the time period is the question, or did other people just not really think it was a big deal? Because it's not like a theme of the book.
Right.
It doesn't affect the story at all. And it really is limited just to some of the commentary in the narrative.
Right. Like it's asides almost. Like they just have some racist asides just
like, oh, you know how this race is.
Yeah.
There's one part, Thomas is a butler, he is a black man, and he does die. He's one of the characters that dies. And after he has died, they are examining his belongings. Yes. And the detective talks about how, well, you know how black people, only they don't say black people, but you know how, they're not using the N-word.
Yeah, they don't use
it's not
the
like
N-word.
that level of racism, but he's like, well, you know how black people never have money because they can't hold on to it. Yeah. It's that sort of thing. And it's like,
there's also some comments about, well, they say Indians, but like Native Americans is what they mean. So, just some like, if you're sensitive to that, I would say definitely don't read this book.
Yeah.
It's
not worth it. It's not like a great book that just has some racism that you should overlook. It's not a great book.
Yeah.
That also has some racism that's hard to overlook.
Yeah. So. It was really jarring to me that no one had mentioned it. And I think that was my thing. It was like, I do understand that older books often have more casual racism in them. I also understand that I was not reading a published copy of this book that was like making money for like a publisher, because I do wonder, there's such small asides. It seems like if you republish this book right now, you could just take that out. It just doesn't need to be in the book.
And I wonder if it has actually in other published copies, if it has been removed. Yeah. So most people aren't reading the Project Gutenberg version. Right. They're reading actual like printed copies.
In which case it would make sense that it was not mentioned on the lists. But, when people know that exists in older books. But there is usually a heads up, I feel like. Yeah. By the way, there's some casual racism in here. Just be prepared for that. And you can read accordingly, and you're not sitting there reading and like read something super offensive and you're like, oh my God, where did this come from? What just happened?
And like so unnecessary too. Like it's just wild.
That was a problem throughout the book. But one of the things we wanted to talk about, like we have some goals as we talk about mysteries. How should we introduce those goals?
Well, I feel like we should take a look at the actual crime itself.
Hard to parse.
And hard to parse because like what? I mean, both of us are, I guarantee that I am the one who is confused because I was confused when I was reading the end of this book. I was like, I don't think I understand what's happening. The logistics of her finding the hidden room was very troubling for me. Yeah. But so we want to look at the actual crime. We want to look at the criminal and sort of dissect like, okay, from their perspective, where did it all go wrong? And we also want to look conversely at the detective and what skills is this detective bringing to the table that is leading to the capture of this criminal, so that we have not so much like a playbook, but like a what not to do, what to avoid when committing crime. If you're not going to avoid the crime, what are the things we should watch out for? So
there's two different unrelated crimes is the thing. One of them is stealing the money from the bank.
Yes.
The other crime is the murder of Junior Armstrong,
which goes unpunished because the woman who murders him dies in the hospital of sepsis.
Yes.
So
and those are related in that probably the murder of Jack Armstrong. I don't even know if it's Junior.
Young one is Jack.
Okay.
Yeah, young one is Jack.
The murder of Junior Armstrong is like likely caused by the series of events, but they're not committed by the same person. So the crime of stealing the money from the bank is not done by the person who kills Junior Armstrong.
Here's my question. When was the money stolen? Like, I'm confused about the timeline because the money has to be in the house before Rachel and Gertrude and Halsey move in.
This is my understanding of it. It doesn't mean it's correct. I want to be so clear. My understanding is that Jack Bailey is new to being a teller at the bank. He was a hire in the last 1 to 2 years. And that the money was actually stolen before Jack came and started keeping the books. So what Senior Armstrong did was he lost a lot of money in some investment. And then he wanted it back. And so he took the bonds that were in the bank and slowly just cashed them out, drained the coffers a little at a time. And then he put that money in his secret room in his house.
Okay.
That is my understanding of the actual crime. That it actually took place 2 years ago, but it was discovered here now. And it was discovered because someone told Jack Bailey to go look at the bank. And he went and looked.
Wasn't that Ann Watson
I
had
think
told
so.
him? Because she knew that she was being extorted for money.
Right. So I think that is what happened. I think. Again, I just want to be
makes
so
sense.
clear.
Let's just go with that. Let's just go with that. That sounds correct. So we have a crime that's happening over a long period of time.
Yes.
The money gets hidden in the home, but they leave the home.
Yes.
So it seems to me like leaving your stolen money in a house that you then rent out to someone else for 6 months.
He didn't know that it was being rented out. He was just going to leave his money unprotected in this home in his secret room and have the house be largely abandoned. And that's also really unclear. But I agree. I think I agree with your point that the key mistake here seems to be leaving his money in this house.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
There is some. I kind of wondered if he knew he would be caught, and that was why he faked his. So he went to California to fake his death so that he could come back and get the money and pretend to be dead.
So here, what he's doing, he's pulling a Bluebeard. If you've read On Stranger Tides,
which no one has and no one should.
No one has except for me, and so I am all alone in my suffering. But in Stranger Tides, Bluebeard, is it Blue? No, it's Blackbeard. It's Blackbeard. Blackbeard is a pirate who is going to use some sort of like voodoo magic to take his soul and put it into the body of another person, thereby escaping the punishments of being a pirate, but also having the knowledge of where to find all of his gold after his other original body has died and been like punished by the law. So now he can enjoy his wealth with impunity. So he's trying to pull a Blackbeard, is what he's doing.
That's what Senior Armstrong is trying to do.
Again, due to his love of money, not the love of power, not the love of stuff. He just likes having money, which I'm like, you could have picked so many other motivations and it would have made so much more sense.
It doesn't make sense why he loves his money so much. He goes on this trip to California. Why didn't he just take his money?
Why is he leaving it here if he loves it so much? Like, there must have been, probably there's some detail hidden in the book that I just glossed over that would explain why he couldn't take his money with him to California.
Louisa and Mrs. Armstrong both know that Senior Armstrong has faked his death. Dr. Watson, not Dr. Watson, Dr. Walker. Dr. Walker has been promised Louisa's hand in marriage for helping to like pull this scheme off. Very unclear why Lady Armstrongs are just going along with this. So I guess good job on this criminal for picking two women who would really support the lies and not say anything. So that was a good step.
The fact that Louisa will not speak up still infuriates me because there was no reason for her to not speak up. She could have blown this whole thing wide open.
It doesn't seem like she had a love of money. So what was her motive? She didn't, oh, it was her mom. I remember. She would do anything for her mom. And Senior Walker said that he would hurt the mom if Louisa said anything.
Oh, like a detail that I glossed over, I guess.
You know, you really, at those back chapters, you got to read real quick because it was... And they were really really info dumping this. I mean, that is
Yes.
kind of like a mystery trope that, like, at the end they tell you exactly how everything worked. But it was really, like, they set up, like, all of these fake mysteries, I feel like. Like, some of them, like, weren't important, weren't interesting. I guess you could call them red herrings, but they were answering all those questions anyway. So at the end, you were getting, like, tons of information. If you skip a sentence, you don't know what happened.
Right. When Anne Watson started info dumping on her deathbed, I had to reread that like 3 times in order to keep track of what was happening. It wasn't until after her info dumping and we get to the part about where she had an injury on her arm and that led to her have blood poisoning. I was like, oh, I do vaguely remember one of the servants having an injured arm and needing to be let go, and that causing the problem of who's going to be the next cook and all of that. You know how some people, they say, like, you should be able to solve a good mystery, you should be able to solve it by reading the book and catching the clues, right? This was not one of those. Like, there was no possible way you could decide that
Anne Watson had done it.
Anne Watson was the murderer. Like, you couldn't get there. You could not, because she didn't have any lines. She didn't say anything ever until the end, I don't think.
A quick question for you. Did you know that the money was hidden in the house? And at what point? Yes. So that was an easy mystery to solve.
As soon as I saw that they were digging into the plaster in the walls, like they were trying to get at somewhere in the walls, I was like, okay, there are 2 possibilities here. Either they found, like, this is their way to get into the house as they're creating an entry point, or someone is digging into the walls because something is hidden in the walls. And it was pretty clear that the only possible, like, treasure is this money that had gone missing from the bank.
I knew that they were looking for something in the house pretty early on. I want to say within the first quarter of the book, I was like, well, yeah, there's something in this house. People are walking around the house. And they're not trying to hurt people.
Yeah, as soon as the guy, like Jack Armstrong, when he gets shot because he's trying to get into the house, I was like, okay, well, there's something here that he wants.
Yeah, there's
like,
something in this house.
That's obvious.
But Rachel doesn't put that together, which is weird.
Rachel misses a lot of clues. So, like, they know the name of the woman who has the child who had the measles, right? They knew her name.
They knew her name.
They hire a lady to come in and work for them as, like, their new cook, I believe. Yeah. And when she comes in, Rachel clocks the initials on her bag, which match the initials of the woman that they knew was the guardian of the child, right? Yep. Doesn't put it together until so much later. And I was like, what?
And it seems especially obvious because the way the author wrote this, like, those scenes where we get the initials, or the initials are remembered, and the scene where we find the initials on the briefcase, those are, like, one scene away from each other. It's like, like, those are brought up so close to each other. It's not like those initials are given, like, at the very beginning of the book, and much later we get the initials on the briefcase. It's, like, right next to each other. There's all these tiny things. I would also say that another problem Jack Armstrong had was that way too many people were involved in this secret.
Yes. I felt like half of the town knew what was going on.
Right?
And like, they were so obvious with everything. Yeah. And they seemed to be really unfamiliar with their own house, like where the best, like, entrances and where to sneak in and like not being fully aware of what's going on in the house. But, like, I mean, when Jack gets shot, he's not sneaking in. He gets let into the house by the maid, I believe. And it's like, I just feel like everybody's just kind of running around and doing stuff. And there's this whole thing where one of the maids, not Liddy, but the other, like Rosie, I think is her name. She's carrying dishes on the driveway. Yeah. And a person who's not even related to anything spooks her. And she drops the dishes. How is he related?
He was hired by Dr. Walker. So he was Dr. Walker's, like, bad boy. So he just, like, did bad boy jobs for Dr. Walker. Again, too many people in on this secret.
So you have Dr. Walker who's working for the Armstrongs, and then Dr. Walker has his own, like, toady.
Yeah.
And
who confesses to everything. That's how
who confesses.
Yeah.
So, like, you got a lot of weak links in this story.
Right. And he picks Dr. Walker because I guess Dr. Walker was in love. Like, Senior Armstrong picks Dr. Walker because Dr. Walker was in love with Louisa. Mm-hmm. And so he promises Louisa's hand in marriage.
Even though she's engaged to somebody else.
And that already feels like a weak link to me. That's not a good, like, you need better motivation for this guy to stay loyal to you. I feel like that's not good.
You need dirt on him.
Right.
Like, you need somebody shady enough for you to be able to hold something over them in order to force them to do what you want them to do.
And someone smart. Like, Dr. Walker hired this idiot toady. You need to pick someone better to be in on it. Someone that you can control. Someone that you have some oversight over. So, I feel like Senior Armstrong made many mistakes. His son also knew about this. Like, that's why he was trying to get in the house to get this money. Too many people knew.
And, like, making all the racket the way that they are. And there's the one part where they say that they're digging in the wall and whoever's on the other side of the wall, like, accidentally throws the instrument they're using through the hole. I was like, everyone's an idiot. Every single character.
That one was Alex. So Jack Bailey. Oh my gosh. Because, Jack Bailey finds out about this from the woman.
Oh, right. And so that's why he's sneaking around, because he's trying to locate the money.
Yes. To prove his innocence.
But he is also a little bit of an idiot, as it turns out.
Everyone in this book is a little bit of an idiot, as it turns out.
Except for the detective, who's, like, steadily putting pieces together and finding things out and placating everybody.
So we wanted to talk about the crimes and, like, the mistakes that were made. I feel like we've done that. And we want to talk about, like, the detective. Is the detective actually Rachel, or is it the actual detective?
It has to be the actual detective.
Right?
I feel like Rachel added absolutely nothing to the investigation.
I
feel like every time he said, she tried to hinder it when she felt like the finger was pointing at Gertrude or Halsey. And when he telling her that she's so excellent and that, I couldn't have done this without you. I do feel like he is just saying that to make her feel good so that he can just do whatever he wants.
Or did he even say that to her?
Did he? Hard to know.
Did he say something and she heard something else?
Well, he takes her along on, like, these nighttime adventures. Like, when he takes her out into the graveyard to go dig up the body, there's no reason for her to be there unless he feels like she's adding something to the investigation. Because they meet up with, who is it? I think it's Alex.
Yeah,
that
it's
takes
Jack
them out
Bailey.
there to dig up the body. And he tells Rachel, he's like, I can't trust anyone else with this. I need you to come along. And I'm like, why? For what reason?
Maybe he didn't know how many people were in on Senior Armstrong's secret. And so that's the only reason that he can, like, trust this person, because he's pretty confident that she's too stupid to be in on the secret. He says...
But it's not like he gave her a job. It was just, you just come.
No, he did give her a job. He told her to be a witness. To witness...
Did I read this book? Did I even read this book? I'm not sure that I did. I think I just, like, hate read it and just skipped over everything
because
that was
she's
important.
Supposed to be the one to give the testimony that it wasn't Senior Armstrong in this grave.
I don't know why he couldn't have done that. It's not like he stands to gain anything from any of this.
Hard to say. I don't know either.
Maybe they needed two. He's like, well, we can't use Alex because he's not even Alex.
Right? We can't use.
So we
Jack
need
Bailey.
somebody who's we need a third person to witness this.
It seems like this detective was completely competent. I don't think he was, like, over the top competent. I just think he was competent. He was competent at his job, able to investigate. I don't think there was anything special about this detective that led to the criminal getting caught. I think the criminal getting caught was because of his own stupidity.
Yeah, like, it wasn't like a super tight-knit mystery. It's just the only reason why we, the audience, are having to struggle with it is that our narrator, our POV character, is struggling with it. So what else can we do?
And she is struggling with it because no one is telling her the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other...
And And also she's an idiot. I do think that's important. That's part of it. There are things that she could have picked up on, but she doesn't because she's not paying attention.
So as we move forward and we're thinking about how we commit the perfect crime, we've learned two things. Don't abandon the evidence in an obvious place.
Right.
Don't abandon
Even if there
the
is
evidence
a secret
in your
room.
house.
Yeah,
And then
secret
leave your
rooms are
house.
too easily discovered through floor plans. And it's like the people who built this house would know. So all they really had to do was go track down the builders of the house.
I feel like it's really the
Who would be able to say.
abandonment of the evidence. Like, if he had stayed in the house and saw these people, like, circling in, then he could have just moved it. But because he was somewhere else, he had abandoned...
And people didn't suspect him anyway. People suspected... What's his
Jack
face?
Bailey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird. So don't abandon the evidence where you can't control it. And I think we've also learned to keep the circle tighter.
Yeah. You can't have too many people that know what's going on and too many people that don't have a stake in it.
And too many people who aren't
Because,
smart.
you know, the love of money is only going to go so far, apparently. Not everybody loves it like you do. So you got to have a little stronger bond to keep everybody together.
And the fact that his wife and daughter were so obviously keeping a secret. Like, I don't know about the wife. We never really see her. But the daughter is so obviously keeping a secret that it's like, well, obviously something's going on. If she's going to be that obvious about it, she cannot be in the circle.
No, she got to be cut out.
And, you know, in this case, cutting her out probably means killing her. So, it's like, I don't think you can... Because if you want to be alive and fake your own death... and your daughter's going to be in the room, like, I think you have to kill her.
Right.
Probably a little more heartless of a main criminal.
Or fake your death in a way that your family is also fooled, because
he doesn't have
if
to
you're
bring
going to go
her.
live in a new life, if you're going to go live a new life, you don't bring your wife and child with you. You have to abandon everybody.
Yeah, this is weird choices by him. Maybe he really loves his wife.
Feels doubtful. She's not money.
Yeah, unless she is a pile of money. I don't see how the character that was set up loves her that much.
She had the personality of a pile of money. That much we know.
Yeah. I just want to shout out to Liddy. She did nothing, but she was a delight the whole time. It's like, I do think Rachel was in love with Liddy, and in a different time, this story would have been a little different.
See, I didn't get that vibe. To me, it was giving like a Rachel and Marilla, not to like keep talking about Anne of Green Gables, but it was giving that sort of, we're just the oldest and bestest of friends, but we also hate each other a little bit.
It really reminded me of the episode of Psych, where there's like the two older women and like one of them is in love with them and she keeps like murdering that woman's like boyfriends. So,
I don't remember that episode.
It's a fun one. So it reminded me of that. I was like, yeah, they love each other. They super are in love with each other, and that's great for them. I think they are really happy with each other, so I think that's fine. Like, I shout out to Liddy. I thought she was the best thing in this book.
I found her annoying at times, like when they were in the library. I think they were in the library with it was Jack, but with Alex the gardener, I believe it was. And she comes in and she's got the basket with the papers from the library, and she's going to reassemble this leather. I was like, first of all, where is she getting the idea to do this? And then the way Rachel's like, no, stop it. People don't want you to read their letters. And I'm like, girl, are you investigating or aren't you?
Right?
And then Liddy insists on putting it together in the hearing of of Alex. We find out later that Alex is the one who wrote the letter. Yeah. But it's like, Liddy, have a little bit of sense. And Rachel gets on her, like, for the same thing. Yeah. And I'm like, why didn't you just say, why don't you go do that somewhere else? Like, why did you make it so obvious? Anyway, it was just frustrating.
There were clues, I guess, that Alex was Jack Bailey, but we could have never guessed that because it's so bizarre that this woman who has met Jack Bailey does not recognize him as this man who is in her house. Like that.
Yeah, I was like, how disguised is he? Like, is he
shaved
got like a
his
wig?
Mustache.
I guess it was like a prodigious mustache.
My husband has shaved his like beard before, and I still recognized him. So
that's weird.
I guess I'm a really good detective.
That's a superpower.
So It was just like, the clues were there because she does like try to follow Gertrude to see who she meets up with, and it is Alex. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I know this is Jack Bailey who wrote this, and I'm gonna follow Gertrude. And when she goes, she sees that it's Alex, and she's like, oh, I guess
it wasn't him.
But so like there were clues there, but it's like I could never have pieced those together because it's so bizarre.
Well, yeah, because she makes the point of saying she's fussing at Liddy for revealing the letter in front of somebody else, because then she's like, all the servants are going to want to go and see, because like everybody's going to want to go and try to solve this mystery. I'm like, is anyone else trying to solve the mystery? Because I don't feel like that's what's happening. So then we're primed to think that the servants are just going to be busybodies. Yeah. And so when Alex is down there, we're like, oh, he's being a busybody, just like Rachel said. But it's like, no, that's not it. It's something completely different is going on, and now I feel stupid because I didn't catch it.
Listen, if the woman who has met Jack Bailey doesn't recognize him because of his shaved mustache, I don't know how I, the reader, am to recognize him. I was not given a picture. Perhaps if I was given a picture pre and post mustache, I could have pieced it together, but they didn't provide that to me in the novel.
We were trapped with only the information that Rachel had to sift through.
It's really hard to talk about a character that has my name. I thought it was fun when I was reading it, but now that we're talking about it, I'm like, are the listeners going to think that I'm the idiot?
Well, it took a long time for them to mention her name. I didn't really think about that as being her name at first. I think I had to like look at the synopsis. I'm like, who is this? What is the name of this character? Because nobody calls her that.
Yeah, they often call, the kids call her Aunt Ray. I've never gone by Ray. Maybe we should call her Aunt Ray. Okay. Aunt Ray's an idiot.
I mean, not anymore, because now we're done talking about her. So we had talked in our first sort of introductory episodes about how we're trying to come up with a way to like rate the novels. Right. How do we come up with a rating system that makes sense, makes more sense to us than like a 5-star rating system? And we have 2 things that we're going to do.
What? Hold on. If you had to use a star rating, what would you give this book? So we can see how bad stars fail.
I would give it 1.5 stars.
I would probably give it 2. 2.
I mean, it's hard to know because because I think like if our system is the lowest you can give is maybe half a star, and that's for truly abysmal garbage. And I don't think this is truly abysmal garbage. No, it has some good elements. It has potential. It did something groundbreaking for the time, which was introduce, this new style of mystery. So I think that's important to consider. Yeah. But like if I'm saying that a 3-star read is just a baseline, like the middle of the road, this is fine. This is a fine book. It's not a fine book. We're not quite getting there. So I don't know. But that's the problem, is that it's hard to know what the rubric is. Yeah. And how much do I consider like the qualities of the book versus how I felt about the book.
Right.
So that's my issue with the star rating system.
Similarly, like a lot of times I will just default to a 3-star setting. Like I read a book, so it's 3 stars. Like if I finished it, it is unlikely that I will finish a book that I would give less than 3 stars to. The only reason I finished this one is because we're doing a podcast about it. It would have been hard to show up today not having read it.
And it's a good thing you did, because obviously I wasn't paying attention.
It's entirely possible, though, that like I got all of that stuff wrong and I just made it up.
Yeah, but you're saying it so confidently that I believe you. So
I would not have finished this if I was not doing this, but I wouldn't give it a 1 star because I did like the beginning, and so I think it would be 2. I think, but what is 2? What does that mean? What does it mean? Okay, so let's discuss
my 2
what it
stars.
means.
Yeah, my 2 stars is different from your 2 stars. Like you've said, like some people will go and they'll give something 4 stars and say it's the best thing that they've ever read. Yeah. And it's like, well, then what was the problem with it?
Yeah, why is it not 5?
Why'd you take off a star? Yeah, I never give something 5 stars because I feel like I can always think about like, oh, it wasn't like transcendent. So I feel like I don't know. My rubric is just all screwed up. My standards are all over the place. I just don't know. And the thing is that your star rating would change. Like if I read, some books that I would rate really high, 20 years ago, I would rate probably pretty low today. So it's just a very flawed system.
All right, so now let's talk about our own system.
So we came up with a matrix of sorts.
Eisenhower matrix?
So we have I think it's based on the Eisenhower matrix. Or it kind of works the way like a Punnett square would.
Yeah.
Where you've got 4 squares. And we have, and I feel like we need to sort of maybe assign these like a title.
Yeah, I think the same.
Or something, which that'll be something we can evolve, which we said we were going to work on it over the process. But
Workshopping.
so we're rating it based on 2 scales. So we have a heart scale and a head scale. So we have, so like if you're graphing, we could say that the heart is running horizontally and the head is running vertically. Something that is high heart is something that we love for what it is. It makes me feel good inside when I read it. Something low heart would be something I didn't like it. I didn't love it. It didn't connect with me. Something high brain or high head, I guess high brain would be it's intelligent, it's smart, it's well written, it's doing something interesting. Makes me think, improves me as a person. Something low brain is something it's not well written, it's not doing anything new or interesting, it's kind of dumb overall. So something could be high heart and low brain, and that would be like a Twilight or like your basic rom-com. It's not doing anything interesting, it's not saying anything, but I'm enjoying it, I'm having a good time, versus something that would be like low heart and high brain, like
Pachinko.
Like Pachinko, I was about to say. That would be like a Pachinko where I hated every second of it, but it was eye-opening. It was well written. It was doing something interesting by telling the story that took place over decades.
Yeah.
So that's not really giving like a this was good or bad rating. So we have an additional step, which is our recommendation, our 1-sentence recommendation. So let's talk about where this falls on the on our scale, on our matrix, I guess.
It would be a low brain, low heart for me.
Yeah, same.
And I think
That's
a low
easy.
brain, low heart is like I would basically never recommend this book. I would recommend other books in certain situations. So when we get to the second part of this, it is like,
I do feel like I wanna make like an actual graph.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm reading My First Penny.
Oh yeah.
So I'm reading Neanderthal 6 Human, and the main character in this does this thing. She does like she comes up with her own like graph thing for, I forget what she makes it. For types of people. She says there are only 4 types of people. There are good people, bad people, lazy people, and I forget what the 4th one is. But she's talking about your actions versus your intentions. So she's saying like people who have good actions and good intentions are good people. People with bad actions and bad intentions are bad people. But she's like people with good intentions but bad actions are just lazy. And people who maybe sneaky was the other one, where people who have bad intentions but good actions are like covering up who they really are.
Oh, that's interesting.
And yeah, it was very interesting. I was like, okay, I see you, Penny. That's interesting. But it reminded me of this. And she talked about how she wanted to like graph people out. Like she could put everybody into certain places on that graph. And then she was like, well, I should add like a third thing and make it 3D. And her third thing would be their level of honesty. And I was like, that all sounds very interesting. But yeah, so I kind of wish that I kind of want to like create a graph and we graph each of these, because like this isn't the bottom of my, like if I were graphing this on the heart line, it wouldn't be on the very bottom because it has likable characters and
really
a kind of a funny
moments.
tone.
Yeah, the tone is really good.
But as far as intelligence goes, like she is kind of doing something new. She created a new subgenre of mystery. I feel like that might give her a point.
Yeah.
So I do feel like I want to create an actual graph, a scatter graph, if you will.
I feel like we could do that and keep it, like maintain it on the 100 Years of Murder page on our website, which I did get set up, by the way, everyone.
Nice. Nice. So when we tell you to go to our website, you can actually go to our website.
There. So we can have a graph, and as we move through the stories, we can each have our own place where we're putting a book, graph it over time. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah. So come up with our 100 Years of Murder scatter graph.
Yeah.
And then we could do that for whatever it is that we do in the future.
Our decade
of romance.
Yeah, decade of romance. But I do think we should have a word to, like, low heart, low.
Yeah, like Janie does in this book. She's got one word to represent the quadrant.
We'll have to think on that. But for this episode, I'll say it's low heart, low brain.
Same for me. So now for our recommendation, our one sentence recommendation. So for the one sentence recommendation, this is your elevator pitch. If somebody says, hey, should I read The Circular Staircase? My answer would be, read this book if, and then we fill in the blank.
It's supposed to be
how
very
might you fill in the blank? Yes, very specific. So not read this book if you like mysteries, because I would not make that recommendation.
No.
There are better mysteries.
My problem, I think I already said this, is that there's very limited circumstances where I would recommend this book. I don't know that there are any. And so the one that I came up with is not good and it's not specific enough. So maybe we can take mine and workshop it into something.
Okay.
I said, read this book if you love reading about characters who are too stupid to live.
Okay.
So that was my takeaway.
I guess we could build on that and say, read this book if you love a stupid POV character who can't figure anything out.
But thinks
that she's figuring everything out and is also lightly racist.
Excellent. I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
I don't think that applies to anyone in the whole world, but
I hope not.
Yeah, like if there is a person that this applies to, I kind of hope they're not listening to this podcast. We don't want you.
Yeah, you're not our people. I'm so sorry. But I do want to, I'm going to do this out of order, but I know we had talked about doing like a writer's workshop idea.
Yeah.
And I do want a writer's workshop this just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I do think that there are some bones in this book that are good and are worth building off of.
I think so too.
So if I were going to rewrite this today, if I were going to do a circular staircase fan fiction.
Which, join our Patreon that we're going to get set up. Maybe Bobby will.
She won't. She's not going to do it. She doesn't have time. But if I were going to do my circular staircase fan fiction, there are some things that I could do. One, I would lean into the ridiculousness. I would make it clear that Miss Rachel is not a reliable narrator.
Yes.
I don't know how I would make that clear, but I would make it clear somehow that this is not somebody that we can really trust. Or I would tell the story through a different character. And I feel like I would go with maybe Gertrude. You could also do, because there are so many different characters involved, we could do like a multiple POV situation.
I think a multiple POV with Rachel being the main POV would actually work really well, because that would set up how unreliable she is, because we would see her through other people's eyes and be like, oh yeah. that woman is a mess. So,
I think that would make it make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
If, we're able to see what other people are actually saying about her.
And other people's motivations, because it was really unclear why a lot of these people were lying. They didn't really seem to need to. And it was also really unclear why the detective was buttering himself up to Rachel. So if we got into his head where he's like, man, I just need access to that house, and that stupid old woman is blocking my path.
Right.
Like, we could have gotten, I think that would have helped as well.
So I would do like a Lucy Foley guest list type of thing, which is a mystery that you can solve if you're paying attention to the clues, because I did solve it halfway through, and I've got it in, like, I wrote notes, I annotated, and so I have proof that I solved it halfway through. But it's you also read the POV of the murderer, and the way that they're able to hide the fact that this person is the murderer is really interesting, because they just don't tell you everything. They just leave out some of the details until you get to the end.
I think Lucy Foley wrote one of my favorite mysteries, The Apartment. Is that hers?
Possibly.
But that one is also multiple POVs, and we do get the murderer's perspective. But the way you see that everyone has a secret, and you don't know what anyone's secret is, and I really love that. So I think if we had more of that vibe, I think it could be really fun. And I do think for people, if anyone has ever watched the K-drama called Boys Over Flowers.
Nice. We're going to get into some lore.
that is a drama that I am obsessed with for reasons that don't need to be gone into. But a lot of times when I'm like thinking about storytelling, I will think, oh, they really need to BOF it up. And, you know, BOF standing for Boys Over Flowers, because the absolute most bananas things happen in Boys Over Flowers. Like you're
it's
like,
so
what?
crazy. It makes no sense. Boys Over Flowers would be a high heart, low brain.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so it is a drama that I think about all the time. And I'm always thinking about it in terms of storytelling as well, because I think that they were able to tell that story is crazy. And I do think that if this story, if they BOFed it up a little bit, made it even crazier, had these over-the-top characters, I think that that would make it more fun.
I think the core problem is that it takes itself a little too seriously.
Yeah. Especially for the characters that are set up. Like, these characters do not seem like people that would be taking this so seriously. Their behavior and their actions are all really wild.
Yeah, it's basically a bunch of rich people doing rich people stuff.
Liddy, the reason that I like Liddy so much is, like, every day she's like, Rachel, I'm leaving, I'm gonna quit. And then, one day Rachel's like, okay, I'll see you at your sister's house. And then Liddy, like, bursts into tears. She's like, you're sending me away? It's just, like that's the vibe that I want from everyone. Yeah. I just want this over-the-top, just wild jumping to conclusions.
Clue.
Yeah.
Like the vibe of Clue, the movie.
Which is really great.
Yeah, where everybody's just a little bit insane.
Yeah.
And that is the only way that this mystery actually makes any sense, if everybody's just a little bit insane.
And I think for everyone to be a little bit insane, we need everyone's little bit insane POV.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the main thing that would fix it. Senior Armstrong being stupid, like, that works for a mystery novel. That's fine.
That's already canon. You know?
That's fine. So I agree.
Do we talk about our next book?
Well, we need to talk about our next book, and then we also need to do our wrap up, which is what are we reading now?
So what are you reading these days?
Honestly, it took me a hot minute to get through The Circular Staircase, and I do only read one book at a time, and I won't lie, I finished this book 45 minutes before we got on our phone call this morning.
That's why it gets so fresh in your memory.
I know.
I finished it yesterday afternoon-ish.
And then you purged it.
I was like, what book? Who? What happened?
Before I started this book, I did think this would be a really quick read. It is only 200 pages, so I thought that The Circular Staircase would go really quick. Unfortunately, it did not.
It did not. It took me a full week of reading, like chipping away at it every day to finish.
I think that's how long it took me. It took me a full week. So the book I was reading before this that I had put on pause to read this was Summertime Punchline, which was very fun. It is also from an author who was at Love Y'all Book Fest, and I can't pull it up. It's on my phone, so I can't tell you the name of her.
This is by Betty Corrello.
By Betty Corrello.
Oh, that's such a nice cover.
It's such a cute cover, and she apparently started her career as like a stand-up comedian. And the woman in the story is a stand-up comedian trying to get her big break. So that's kind of the setup for the novel. She's gotten a spot in a like stand-up kind of festival type thing, so she's going to go and do her show. And she breaks up with her boyfriend because he was cheating on her with her roommate in the first chapter, and that's very it was charming and fun. She like goes back to her hometown, which she hates. I like it when a character has a major life upheaval and they return to their hometown. I think that's fun vibes. So that is what I am currently reading, Summertime Punchline, and I think it's pretty fun. And also the author, when I saw her in person, she was delightful. I loved her.
I am the opposite in that I'm reading a bunch of books simultaneously all the time. I'm still chipping away at Legendary, the third book in the Caraval series. That's going to be a while, so I'm just not going to mention that anymore until I finish it. I just finished reading A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft, another author who was at the Love Y'all Book Fest.
I remember her. She was nice.
Yeah, this one is about it's sort of an alternate alternate historical fantasy where some people have like magical powers and other people don't. That the magical powers seem to be kind of fading. It seems to be sort of based on an England versus Ireland kind of situation.
Okay.
It is about a Macklish girl with magical powers. She's a seamstress, and she can weave enchantments into her garments. She can make you feel any kind of way with the clothes that she makes.
That's fun.
So she gets summoned to the palace to make the wedding garments for the prince who is marrying a girl who is basically from Spain. And it's very funny because she doesn't want to get married and he doesn't want to get married. And the seamstress falls in love with the prince who's like kind of prickly at first, but then kind of warms up. It was okay. It was very fun. I liked the vibe, and I enjoyed the fact that she was a seamstress, of course, because I also sew. And so it was nice kind of reading about her, doing the details of the designs and stuff. I am also reading Neanderthal Seeks Human by Penny Reid. Having a great time with that. Stay tuned for more. I am about to start reading our Will It AT's March book, which I have forgotten the name of.
By Tessa Bailey. That's what I remember.
It is by Tessa Bailey, and it is about vacation, My Killer Vacation.
My Killer Vacation, yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll read next.
That's what I'm reading. I'm not reading anything heavy right now. I'm kind of taking a little break. I have been reading Sabatahir's Ember in the Ashes series, and I finished the 3rd book recently. So I'm going to take a break before I get into the 4th. So that's where I am.
Our next book for this show, what are we called? What are we called?
We're called Readers of the Lost Art.
The next book for Readers of the Lost Art is Trent's Last Case by E.C. Bentley. Oh, nice! I nailed that. That was from the old dome.
Yeah, you really pulled that out. That one's also on Project Gutenberg. Just FYI. I also bought a used copy so I can read it on my Kobo, or I can read the used copy. Don't know which one I'm aiming for right now.
I did hunt around. I was at a used bookstore yesterday, and so I did hunt around for basically all of our books. And I did find the 3rd one, which I've forgotten the name of, but that's fine. We don't need to talk about it yet.
The Red House by A.A. Milne.
Well, that's not the one we're reading next, so it doesn't matter that I did find that one and bought it.
We're all about Trent's Last Case right now.
I did look for Trent's Last Case, and it was not there. I also, even though I'd already read most of it, I looked for the Circular Staircase, and they did not have that book. But they did have one book by Mary Roberts Rinehart, which I did find pretty exciting that there was one there. And I think it is her most famous one, which is called The Man in Downstairs or The Man in Tinby or something like that. I don't know. So I think it's another mystery, and I think it's her more famous mystery. And I don't know why I started telling that story, but I saw those books. Yeah. Oh, next month. Next month we're reading Trent's Last Case. That's where I was. All right, see you next time, man.
Bye.
Nailed it.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoy, please subscribe to the podcast and also leave us a review.
If you have any questions for us, you can email us at readersoftheLostArtPod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Blusky at ReadersPod and on Instagram and Threads at Readers of the Lost Art Pod.
If you would like to hear more from us, you can receive our free weekly newsletter by joining our Patreon, Readers of the Lost Art. It will have news, behind-the-scenes content, and our reading books.
We'll see you next time. Be the light.